My name is Rachel. I'm 29 years old and I live in Seattle. For 3 years, I thought I knew the man I was building a future with. Derek and I had plans. A house, maybe kids someday, the whole picture. But lately something felt off. He was distant, distracted, like he was slowly slipping away from me. I kept telling myself it was just stress, just a phase. I had no idea that what he was about to say would shatter everything I believed about us. Before I dive into what happened, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, and if you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to hear what Derek said next, and how it completely changed my life. Derek and I met 3 years ago at a networking event in downtown Seattle. It was one of those mixer things where everyone stands around with wine glasses pretending to be more successful than they actually are. But when Derek walked up to me, something felt different. He worked in tech sales, had this confident energy about him, the kind that makes you feel like everything's going to be okay. I was working as a marketing manager for a startup focused on sustainable fashion, pouring my heart into building something meaningful. Those first few months were exactly what I'd always hoped a relationship could be. We'd have date nights at little restaurants in Capitol Hill, go hiking in the Cascades on weekends, take spontaneous trips down to Portland just because. Derek talked about the future constantly. He'd point out houses we passed and say, "That's the kind of place I want to raise kids in." He'd talk about what our life would look like in 5 years, 10 years. I introduced him to my parents when they visited from Spokane, and they loved him. My dad, who's usually skeptical of every guy I date, actually pulled me aside and said, "This one's a keeper." I genuinely believed Derek was the person I was going to marry. Every part of my life started to orbit around our relationship. I'd plan my weekends around his schedule, make decisions about my career with our future in mind. When a company in San Francisco tried to recruit me with a better salary, I turned them down because Derek's life was here in Seattle. I didn't even hesitate. That's how sure I was. But about 6 months ago, things started shifting. It wasn't dramatic at first, just small things. Derek began staying late at work more often. When he came home, he'd be on his phone constantly scrolling through messages with this little smile that didn't include me. Our conversations became surface level. I'd tell him about something that happened at work, something I was excited or worried about, and he'd just nod absently while looking at his screen. The warmth between us started to cool degree by degree. When I tried to bring up our future ask about when we might start looking at rings or talking seriously about moving in together, Derek would suddenly become vague. "I'm not sure I'm ready for that conversation yet," he'd say. Or, "Let's just see how things go." It felt like he was pulling away, but I couldn't figure out why. My best friend Jordan, who I work with at the startup, noticed it too. She pulled me aside one afternoon after Derek had blown off plans to meet us for drinks. "He seems kind of cold lately," she said gently. "Are you two okay?" I immediately defended him. "Every couple goes through rough patches," I said. "He's probably just stressed about work." Then came the conversation that should have been my first real warning. We were at my apartment one evening after dinner. I'd made his favorite meal, trying to recreate some of that early magic we used to have. We were sitting on my couch, and I brought up marriage. Not in a pressuring way, just casually. I wasn't demanding a ring or a timeline. I just wanted to know if we were on the same page about where this relationship was going. Derek's whole body language changed. He set down his wine glass and leaned back, putting physical distance between us. "I'm not sure I'm ready for that conversation," he said, his voice flat. "Marriage is a big commitment. I need to be absolutely sure." The way he said it made my stomach drop. I asked him if it was about me, if there was something I'd done wrong or something he needed from me that he wasn't getting. He shook his head. "It's not about you," he said, but there was no reassurance in his tone. The conversation ended with this uncomfortable silence hanging between us. Derek left earlier than usual that night, saying he had an early morning. I stood at my apartment window watching his car pull away, feeling this gnawing anxiety in my chest. That night I lay in bed alone, replaying every moment of our relationship, trying to figure out where I'd gone wrong, what I'd missed. 2 weeks after that awkward conversation about marriage, Something happened that turned my vague worries into concrete fear. It was a Saturday morning and I'd stayed over at Derek's apartment. He had a nice place in Belltown with a view of the water, the kind of bachelor pad that always felt temporary to me, like he was waiting to move into a real home with someone. With me, I'd thought. Derek had gotten up early to take a shower. I was still half asleep in his bed when I heard his phone buzz on the kitchen counter. I wasn't trying to snoop. I wasn't that person. But the apartment was small, and I could hear the notification sound clearly. Then another buzz, and another. Curious. I got up and walked into the kitchen thinking maybe it was something important, maybe something I should let him know about. The phone was face up on the counter. The preview of a text message was right there on the lock screen. It was from someone saved in his phone as just the letter A. The message read, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Same place." My heart started pounding. I stared at that message trying to come up with innocent explanations. A coworker. A friend. Something completely normal and not at all suspicious. When Derek came out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, hair still wet, I was standing there with my arms crossed. "Who's A?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Derek barely blinked. He walked over, picked up his phone and glanced at the message. "Oh, that's Alex, a colleague. We're grabbing drinks tonight to discuss a project we're working on." He said it so casually, so smoothly that I wanted to believe him. But something in my gut told me this wasn't the whole truth. "You don't trust me?" Derek asked, and suddenly I was the one on the defensive. His tone had shifted from casual to slightly offended. "I'm just asking a question," I said. That message seemed kind of personal. Derek sighed like I was being unreasonable. "Alex and I are friends. We work together. That's all." Then he turned the conversation on me. "Why are you reading my messages anyway?" "That's kind of invasive, Rachel." I apologized. I actually apologized for seeing a message that appeared on his phone screen while it was sitting on the counter. I told him I wasn't trying to invade his privacy, that I was just concerned. Derek accepted my apology, but there was this coldness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Or maybe it had been there all along, and I was just finally seeing it. Over the next few weeks, Derek became even more distant. He had work dinners 3 or 4 nights a week, late meetings, weekend projects that required his attention. Every time I suggested coming over to his place, or asked if he wanted to come to mine, he had an excuse. "I'm swamped with deadlines. I need to focus. Can we take a rain check?" I started noticing other changes too. Derek had always dressed well, but suddenly he was more meticulous about his appearance. New cologne that I didn't recognize. Shirts I'd never seen before. He'd always been fit, but now he was at the gym constantly posting workout photos on social media. At first I thought maybe he was just trying to feel better about himself, dealing with stress in a healthy way. Then I found the receipt. I was at Derek's apartment and he'd asked me to grab his jacket from the closet because we were heading out to dinner. When I picked up the jacket, a small piece of paper fell out of the pocket. It was a receipt from an expensive Italian restaurant downtown, the kind of place where dinner for 2 runs at least $200. The date was from 3 nights earlier when Derek had told me he was working late. When I asked him about it at dinner, Derek didn't miss a beat. "That was a client dinner," he explained. "We landed a big account, so my boss told me to take the client somewhere nice." He smiled at me across the table. "Why you jealous? I went to a fancy restaurant without you." He said it like it was a joke, but there was an edge to his voice. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. Because if Derek was lying, if he was seeing someone else, then everything I'd built my life around for 3 years was a lie. So I pushed down the doubt and forced a smile. "Of course not," I said. "I'm glad the deal went well." But Jordan wasn't as willing to let it go. A week later, she called me in the middle of the afternoon, her voice tense. "Rachel, I need to tell you something and I don't want you to be mad at me." She'd been downtown during her lunch break and had seen Derek walking out of a hotel with a woman. They weren't just walking together. They were holding hands. The woman was laughing at something Derek said, and he had his arm around her waist. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. What did she look like? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jordan described her. Tall blonde, probably late 20s, wearing business casual clothes. It could have been a coworker, I told Jordan. Maybe they were at a business lunch at the hotel restaurant. Even as I said it, I knew how pathetic it sounded. Jordan was quiet for a moment. Maybe she finally said, "I just thought you should know." That evening I decided I had to confront Derek directly. I couldn't keep living with this anxiety eating away at me. I texted him and asked if we could meet for coffee. He agreed, and we met at a place near Pike Place Market, neutral territory. I'd rehearsed what I was going to say a dozen times, but when I sat down across from him, the words came out shaky and uncertain. "Is there something you're not telling me?" I asked. "Are you seeing someone else?" Derek's face hardened. "Rachel, this again. We've been through this. I told you there's nothing going on." But I pressed. "Jordan saw you with a woman. You were holding hands. You came out of a hotel together." Derek's expression shifted from defensive to angry. "So now you have your friends spying on me. That's healthy." "The woman was Amanda from work," he said. "We were at a business lunch at the hotel restaurant. We were not holding hands. Your friend saw us walking out together and jumped to conclusions." He leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. "Why are you so insecure, Rachel? Why can't you just trust me?" I felt tears starting to form, and I hated myself for it. "I'm not insecure. I'm just trying to understand why you've been so distant, why everything feels different." Derek sat back, his arms crossed. "You know what? If you can't trust me, if you're going to question everything I do, maybe we need to rethink this relationship." The threat hung in the air between us. I was terrified of losing him, terrified that my suspicions and questions were pushing him away. So I backed down. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "You're right. I should trust you." Derek reached across the table and took my hand, but the gesture felt empty. "I forgive you," he said, "but you need to work on your trust issues." On the walk back to my car, I felt hollowed out. I'd gone into that conversation looking for truth, and instead I'd been made to feel like the problem. Like my gut instinct, which was screaming that something was wrong, was just paranoia and insecurity. 1 month later, on a warm evening in late August, everything came crashing down. I'd spent the day cooking Derek's favorite meal, a complicated pasta dish that took hours to prepare. I wanted to surprise him, to show him that I was still invested, still trying. I texted him that I was coming over, but he didn't respond. I figured he was busy with work, so I just went ahead. When I arrived at his apartment building, I used the spare key he'd given me months ago. The door was unlocked, which was unusual. Derek was always careful about locking up. I walked in quietly, carrying the containers of food planning to set everything up in his kitchen as a surprise. That's when I heard his voice coming from the bedroom. He was on a video call, and the door was slightly open. I should have announced myself. I should have called out, let him know I was there. But something in his tone stopped me. He sounded relaxed, intimate, in a way he hadn't sounded with me in months. I stood in the hallway, frozen, listening. The voice on the other end of the call was female, light and flirtatious. "When are you going to tell her?" the woman asked. Derek laughed. "Tell her what?" "That we're together," the woman said. "That this is serious." There was a pause, and then Derek's voice, casual and cruel. "Yeah, she's still around, but it's not serious. Never really was." My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the food containers. The woman on the call said something I couldn't quite hear, and Derek responded, "When I'm ready." "I have options. She's not the only one." I couldn't listen anymore. I pushed open the bedroom door. Derek was sitting on his bed, laptop in front of him, his face visible in the video call window. When he saw me, his eyes went wide. He immediately closed the laptop, cutting off the call. "Rachel," he said, standing up quickly. "What are you doing here? Who was that?" My voice came out stronger than I felt. Derek ran a hand through his hair, and for the first time since I'd known him, he looked genuinely rattled. "That was just a friend, an old friend from college. We were catching up." I walked further into the room. "I heard what you said. I heard you say, 'I'm not serious, that you have options.' What does that mean?" Derek's face shifted. The rattled expression disappeared, replaced by something colder. You were eavesdropping. That's really low, Rachel. But I wasn't going to let him turn this around on me. Not this time. Answer the question, I said. What did you mean when you said I'm not serious? That you have options? Derek let out a long breath, and I watched something in him decide. Fine, he said. You want the truth? I've been seeing other people. And I have every right to. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? We're in a relationship. We've been together for 3 years. Derek shook his head. We never said we were exclusive. That was your assumption, not mine. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Of course we're exclusive. We've been dating for 3 years. We talked about marriage. Derek shrugged, and that casual gesture made me want to scream. That's your interpretation. Look, I'm a man. I have the right to marry any woman I want and do anything I want before that. The entitlement in his voice was staggering. Do anything I repeated. Yes, Derek said. Date multiple women. Explore my options. That's my right. You should be grateful I spent any time with you at all. I could have any woman I want. Each word felt like a knife. So all this time, I said slowly, you've been lying to me, seeing other women, leading me on. Derek actually rolled his eyes. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. There's a difference. I stared at this man I thought I knew, and he suddenly looked like a stranger. What am I to you then, I asked. If I'm not your girlfriend, if this relationship isn't real, what have I been? Derek seemed to consider the question. You're convenient, he finally said. But not the only one. And honestly, Rachel, you're getting kind of clingy. It's not attractive. Something in me broke in that moment, but it wasn't what Derek thought. It wasn't my heart breaking for him. It was something else. A clarity. A realization that I had been wasting 3 years of my life on someone who saw me as convenient, as an option. I walked over to the corner of his bedroom where I kept a few things: a toothbrush, some clothes for when I stayed over. I gathered them silently. Don't be dramatic, Derek said. Rachel, come on. I didn't respond. I just kept packing. Derek watched me with what looked like mild annoyance. You're really going to end it over this? He asked. You're that insecure? I turned to face him one last time. I'm not insecure, I said. I'm done. Then I walked out of his apartment down the stairs into my car. I made it about 3 blocks before I had to pull over because I couldn't see through my tears. I sat there in my car parked on some random residential street in Belltown and cried like I hadn't cried since I was a child. 3 years. 3 years of my life given to someone who thought I was convenient, who thought he had the right to treat me like one option among many. I called Jordan. She answered on the first ring. What's wrong? She asked immediately. Can you come over? I managed to say. I need you. She was at my apartment before I even got there, waiting in the parking lot. When I pulled in and got out of my car, she just opened her arms and I fell into them. That night she stayed with me, letting me cry and rage and process. At one point she said, I want to go over there and tell him exactly what I think of him. But I stopped her. It won't help, I said. He won't care. Lying in my bed that night, Jordan asleep on my couch, I stared at the ceiling and tried to understand how I'd gotten here, how I'd missed all the signs, how I'd let myself believe Derek's lies for so long. But more than that, I wondered what I was going to do next. Because even though I was devastated, even though I felt like my entire future had just been ripped away, a small part of me felt something else. Relief. And underneath that, the first spark of anger. 2 weeks after the breakup, I was starting to feel like maybe I could survive this. I'd thrown myself into work, taken on extra projects, stayed late at the office to avoid going home to my empty apartment. Jordan checked in on me constantly, bringing me coffee and lunch, making sure I was eating. My parents called every few days, worried but supportive. I hadn't told them the full story, just that Derek and I had broken up. I couldn't bear to explain how thoroughly he'd deceived me. Then on a Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Stephanie, a mutual friend of Derek's and mine. We'd met through Derek and had stayed friendly, though we weren't super close. "Rachel," she said when I answered, her voice hesitant, "I don't know if I should tell you this, but I think you'd want to know." My stomach dropped. "What is it?" "Derek posted something on social media," she said. "I know you unfollowed him, so you probably didn't see it. He's engaged." The world seemed to tilt. What I said. "Engaged to who to?" Stephanie said. "Some woman he works with. He posted the announcement yesterday. Ring and everything." The caption says she said yes. I did the math in my head. Derek and I had broken up 2 weeks ago. He'd proposed to someone else already. How was that even possible? Stephanie must have heard my silence. "Do you want me to send you the post?" she asked gently. "I don't know if seeing it will help or hurt, but I can send it if you want." "Send it," I heard myself say. The screenshot came through a minute later. There was Derek looking happier than I'd seen him look in months, his arm around a tall blonde woman. She was gorgeous, holding up her left hand to show off a diamond ring. The caption read, "She said yes. Can't wait to start forever with this amazing woman." The post had been up for a week. It had hundreds of likes and comments. "Congratulations. Best wishes. You two are perfect together." I felt sick. I showed Jordan the screenshot that evening. She stared at it, her face darkening. "He proposed to someone else a week after you broke up. That's impossible. He had to have been planning this for a while." The realization hit me like a truck. Derek had been with Natalie the whole time. Maybe longer than he'd been with me. The woman saved as A in his phone. Amanda from work. It was her all along. I couldn't stop myself. I started digging. Not stalking, I told myself. Just gathering information. I looked at Natalie's social media, which was public. I scrolled back through months of posts. There 8 months ago was a photo of her at a restaurant. In the background, barely visible, was Derek. 7 months ago, a hiking photo. 6 months ago, a concert. They'd been together for at least 8 months, maybe longer. The entire time, Derek had been telling me he loved me, promising me a future. He'd been building a life with someone else. But it got worse. A few days later, I got a message from someone I didn't know. Her name was Lauren, and her message said, "I heard through mutual friends that you used to date Derek." I dated him too about 4 years ago. He did the same thing to me. Cheated the whole time, then dumped me when he found someone better. "I just wanted you to know you're not alone and it's not your fault. He's always been like this." I responded, asking her to tell me more. Lauren and I talked on the phone that evening. She told me that Derek had dated her for 2 years, all while seeing at least one other woman on the side. When she confronted him, he'd said almost the same things he'd said to me. That he had the right to date whoever he wanted. That she should be grateful for the time he gave her. That she was too insecure and clingy. When he'd found someone he liked better, he dumped Lauren without warning and moved on. "This is his pattern," Lauren said. "He finds women who are kind and trusting, uses them for as long as it serves him, and then discards them when something shinier comes along. He doesn't see women as people. We're just options to him. Conveniences." After I hung up with Lauren, I sat in my apartment feeling something shift inside me. This wasn't just about me. Derek had hurt multiple women. He was going to keep hurting women. And now he was engaged to Natalie, who had no idea what kind of person she was about to marry. I thought about leaving it alone, moving on with my life, letting Derek and Natalie figure out their own mess. But then I thought about what Lauren had said. He doesn't see women as people. I thought about how Derek had looked at me when he said I was convenient. How he'd shrugged when I asked what I meant to him. How he genuinely believed he had the right to treat people however he wanted with no consequences. That's when I started paying attention to something I'd overlooked before. When I was packing my things from Derek's apartment, I'd grabbed everything that was mine. But in my rush to leave, I'd accidentally taken a folder that had been sitting on his desk. I'd thought it was mine, something I'd left there. It wasn't until days later that I opened it and realized it was Derek's. Inside were business documents, contracts, emails, reports. At first I wasn't interested, but as I flipped through, something caught my eye. It was a series of emails between Derek and his clients discussing a product his company sold. The emails made it clear that Derek had been misrepresenting the capabilities of the product, telling clients it could do things it couldn't, making promises the company couldn't keep, essentially lying to close sales. There were also notes in Derek's handwriting strategies for misleading clients' ways to word things so they'd technically be true, but would lead clients to false conclusions. This wasn't just bad sales tactics. This was potentially fraud, consumer protection violations, the kind of thing that could get someone fired and possibly face legal consequences. I sat there with this folder in my lap, realizing that Derek wasn't just toxic in his personal life. He was unethical in his professional life, too. And that's when I made my decision. Not out of revenge, though I'd be lying if I said I didn't want Derek to face consequences for what he'd done, but more because I realized that if I did nothing, Derek would keep hurting people, professionally and personally. Women would keep falling for his act. Clients would keep getting scammed. And Derek would keep believing he had the right to do anything he wanted without accountability. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of purpose. I wasn't going to be Derek's victim. I wasn't going to be one more woman he discarded and forgot about. I was going to make sure that his actions had consequences, not through drama or confrontation, but through the truth. I was going to expose exactly who Derek really was, and I was going to do it carefully, legally, and thoroughly. The next morning, I called Jordan before work. "I need your help with something," I said. "It's about Derek." Jordan, who had a background in legal compliance from her previous job, came over that evening. I showed her the documents I'd found. She read through them carefully, her expression getting more serious with each page. "Rachel, this is big," she said. "These aren't just questionable sales tactics. This is fraud. He's explicitly lying to clients about product capabilities. That violates consumer protection laws." We spent the next week researching. Jordan helped me understand exactly what laws Derek had potentially broken. We made copies of everything, organized the documents, chronologically highlighted the most damaging sections. We built a timeline of Derek's deceptive practices. I wasn't doing this recklessly. I wanted to make sure that if I was going to report Derek, I had solid evidence and knew exactly what I was reporting. But I also knew I needed to do something about Natalie. She deserved to know who she was marrying. The question was how to tell her without coming across as a jealous ex. I didn't want to hurt her. I wanted to protect her. Jordan and I discussed it extensively. "You have to be careful," Jordan warned. "If you approach her the wrong way, she might think you're just trying to break them up out of spite. She might tell Derek, and then he'll know you're the one who reported him." I decided on a measured approach. First, I'd file the complaint about Derek's business practices. Then, after that was underway, I'd reach out to Natalie. That way, if Derek accused me of making up lies about him professionally, there would already be an official investigation backing up my claims. I spent 3 days drafting the complaint. I included copies of all the relevant documents, highlighted the specific regulations I believed Derek had violated, and provided a clear timeline of events. I submitted it to Derek's company's ethics hotline and to the relevant regulatory body for consumer protection. The complaint was anonymous initially, but I included my contact information in case investigators needed more details. Within a week, I got a call from the company's internal investigation team. They wanted to meet with me to discuss the documents I'd provided. I met with them at their offices, bringing Jordan along for support. The investigators were professional and thorough. They asked detailed questions about how I'd obtained the documents, what my relationship to Derek was, and why I was coming forward now. I was honest. I told them I'd dated Derek, that the relationship had ended, and that I'd accidentally taken these documents when packing my things. But I emphasized that my motivation wasn't personal revenge. "These documents show clear evidence of consumer fraud," I said. "Whether or not Derek and I had a relationship, this information deserves to be investigated." The investigators seemed satisfied with my answers. They told me they'd be launching a full investigation and might contact me again. 2 weeks later, Derek was suspended from his job pending the investigation. I didn't feel triumphant when I heard. I felt relieved, like maybe finally there would be accountability. The investigation moved quickly. The company brought in external auditors to review Derek's sales records and client communications. They discovered that Derek's deceptive practices had cost the company significant money in refunds, legal fees, and damaged reputation. Multiple clients had complained, but their concerns had been dismissed. Now, with clear evidence, the company had no choice but to act. Derek was terminated within a month. The company also referred the case to state authorities for potential criminal charges related to consumer fraud. I learned all this, not because I was tracking it obsessively, but because the investigators kept me informed as a witness. They thanked me for coming forward, saying that without my complaint, Derek's practices might have continued indefinitely. But my work wasn't done. I still needed to warn Natalie. I'd been putting it off, afraid of how she'd react, afraid she wouldn't believe me. But knowing what I knew now, knowing the kind of person Derek truly was, I couldn't in good conscience stay silent. I found Natalie on LinkedIn. It seemed more professional than Facebook or Instagram, less invasive. I sent her a carefully worded message. Hi Natalie, my name is Rachel. I know this is unusual, but I wanted to reach out to you. I dated Derek for 3 years and our relationship ended recently. I'm not reaching out to cause drama or break you up, but there are things about Derek that I think you deserve to know before you marry him. I understand if you don't want to talk to me, but I felt I owed it to you, woman to woman, to at least offer the information. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. 2 days passed with no response. I figured Natalie had probably shown Derek the message and he'd convinced her I was a crazy ex. But then on the 3rd day, Natalie responded. Thank you for reaching out. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Can we talk on the phone? We set up a time to talk that evening. I was nervous rehearsing what I'd say, trying to figure out how to explain everything without sounding bitter or vengeful. When Natalie called, her voice was cautious but not hostile. I appreciate you reaching out, she said. Derek told me about you. He said you two dated, but it wasn't serious, and that you didn't take the breakup well. I took a breath. Natalie, I'm going to tell you the truth and I have evidence to back it up. What you do with this information is completely up to you. I'm not trying to win Derek back. I don't want him back. I just think you deserve to know who you're marrying. I told her everything. About the 3 years Derek and I had spent together. About how he'd been seeing her while still with me. About the conversation where he'd said he had the right to marry any woman and do anything he wanted. About finding out he'd done the same thing to his ex before me. I sent her screenshots of messages, photos of us together with timestamps that overlapped with her relationship with Derek. I was calm, factual, not emotional. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then Natalie said quietly, I had suspicions. He's been distant with me lately, too. And controlling. He gets angry if I ask where he's been or who he's with. He says I'm being paranoid, that I need to trust him. The same words Derek had said to me. We talked for over an hour. Natalie told me about her relationship with Derek. How he'd pursued her aggressively at first, making her feel special and chosen. How he'd promised her everything she'd ever wanted. But lately, she'd noticed him pulling away, being secretive just like I had. At the end of our conversation, Natalie thanked me. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, she said. But I'm grateful you told me. You didn't have to do that. I know, I said. But I wished someone had warned me. I don't want you to go through what I went through. Over the next week, Natalie and I exchanged a few more messages. She'd started asking Derek direct questions about his past, about me, about his behavior. He'd been evasive and defensive. She'd also noticed that he'd lost his job, something he'd tried to hide from her by pretending to go to work each day. Finally, Natalie made her decision. She called off the engagement. She told me later that Derek had tried to convince her it was all a misunderstanding, that I was lying, that she was making a mistake. But she stood firm. I deserve better than someone who lies and manipulates, she told me. Thank you for giving me the information I needed to make that choice. Natalie and I didn't become close friends. Our connection was born from shared trauma, which isn't the best foundation for friendship. but we stayed in touch occasionally, and I was glad I'd reached out to her. About a month after the investigation concluded, Derek started calling me. The first few calls came in rapid succession one afternoon. I ignored them. Then the text started. "Did you report me? Did you ruin my life?" I didn't respond. The messages continued escalating from angry to desperate. "Rachel, please. I lost my job. Natalie left me. I have nothing. Can we talk? I need to explain." I blocked his number, but he started emailing. The emails were long, rambling attempts at justification mixed with accusations. "You're vindictive," one email said. "You couldn't handle that, I moved on, so you destroyed my career." Another email said, "I made mistakes, but you didn't have to ruin everything. What do you want from me?" An apology. "Fine. I'm sorry. Can we move past this now?" Jordan advised me to keep ignoring him, but part of me wanted closure. Not for Derek's sake, but for mine. I wanted to look him in the eye and tell him exactly what I thought of him. So I finally responded to one of his emails. "I'll meet you once. One conversation. Then you leave me alone." We agreed to meet at a coffee shop near the waterfront, a public place with plenty of people around. I told Jordan where I'd be and when, just in case. Derek arrived looking terrible. He'd lost weight, his usually neat appearance was disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He sat down across from me, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Derek said, "You really did it. You destroyed everything." His voice was hollow. I looked at him calmly. "I didn't destroy anything, Derek. You did. I just brought the truth to light." Derek leaned forward. "You're vindictive. You couldn't handle that I moved on, so you decided to ruin my life. Is that what you think I asked? That this was about jealousy, Derek? I reported you because you were committing fraud. I warned Natalie because you were lying to her the same way you lied to me. This wasn't revenge. This was accountability." Derek scoffed. "Accountability? You sound like a self-righteous lecture." "I never meant to hurt you," Derek said, his tone shifting to something that might have been meant to sound apologetic. "I made mistakes in our relationship, but going after my career, that was too far. You had a choice," I said. "You could have been honest. You could have treated people with respect. But you chose to lie, to manipulate, to use people. Those choices have consequences." "So what do you want?" Derek asked, frustrated. "An apology." "Fine. I'm sorry I hurt you. Are you happy now? I don't want anything from you anymore, Derek," I said. "I really don't." "Then why did you do all this?" he demanded. "Because," I said slowly, "you told me you had the right to marry any woman and do anything you wanted. You thought you were untouchable. You thought you could treat people however you liked with no consequences." Derek was silent, staring at me with something that might have been realization dawning on his face. "But you forgot something," I continued. "You forgot that actions have consequences. And the women you underestimated, the women you thought were just convenient options, were stronger and smarter than you ever gave us credit for. You spent so much time thinking you were playing us, but you never considered that we might see through you, that we might fight back." Derek looked down at his hands. "I'm sorry, Rachel. For everything. For lying, for using you, for making you feel like you weren't enough. You were always enough. I was the problem. I appreciate that," I said. "But sorry doesn't undo the damage. It's just a start. What happens now is up to you. You can learn from this and become a better person, or you can keep blaming everyone else for your problems. But that's your journey, not mine." I stood up, preparing to leave. Derek looked up at me. "What about us? Is there any chance we could try again?" "Someday? No, Derek," I said firmly. "There isn't. We're done. Goodbye." I walked out of that coffee shop and didn't look back. I'd said what I needed to say. I'd gotten my closure. Whatever Derek did next was his problem, not mine. In the weeks that followed, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Derek was struggling. He'd moved back in with his parents, was looking for work, but finding it difficult with his termination on his record. Some people felt sorry for him. Others thought he'd gotten what he deserved. I tried not to think about it too much. What I focused on instead was my own life. Work had become fulfilling in a way it hadn't been before. Without the emotional drain of Derek's lies and manipulation, I had energy to pour into my career. The sustainable fashion campaign I'd been working on launched to great success. We got media coverage, attracted new investors, and our sales increased significantly. My boss noticed my contributions and promoted me to senior marketing manager with a significant raise. More than the professional success, I felt different internally. More confident. More assertive. I started speaking up in meetings, pitching bold ideas I might have held back before. My opinions were respected, my strategies implemented. Colleagues started coming to me for advice. I realized that all the energy I'd been spending trying to fix my relationship with Derek, trying to be enough for someone who would never value me, could be redirected into building something meaningful. I also started mentoring younger women in the company, particularly those just starting their careers. I didn't share the specific details of my experience with Derek, but I did talk about recognizing red flags in relationships, about not settling for less than you deserve, about trusting your instincts when something feels off. I wanted to help them avoid the mistakes I'd made, the years I'd wasted on someone unworthy of my time and love. The first few months after everything happened with Derek were hard in ways I didn't expect. Even though I knew intellectually that Derek had been toxic, that I'd made the right decision to leave and to expose his behavior emotionally, I still struggled. There were nights when I'd lie in bed and replay our entire relationship in my head, analyzing every moment, wondering how I'd missed the signs. Wondering what was wrong with me that I'd stayed so long with someone who treated me so poorly. Jordan was patient with me through all of it. She'd come over with takeout and listen to me process the same thoughts over and over. "Nothing is wrong with you," she'd remind me. Derek was good at manipulation. That's what manipulators do. They make you doubt yourself so you don't see them clearly. But I still felt stupid, naive, like I should have known better. My therapist, who I'd started seeing a few weeks after the breakup, helped me reframe things. "Derek's behavior says everything about him and nothing about you," she told me. "You trusted someone. That's not a character flaw. That's a beautiful quality. The problem is that Derek abused that trust. But that doesn't mean you should stop trusting. It means you should learn to recognize warning signs earlier." We worked on that together, identifying the red flags I'd ignored. The way Derek had isolated me from friends by making plans and then canceling at the last minute so many times that eventually I stopped making plans. The way he'd criticize small things about me, little comments that seemed like jokes, but added up to make me feel insecure. The way he'd always turned arguments around to make me the problem, so I'd end up apologizing for bringing up legitimate concerns. Recognizing these patterns helped, but healing wasn't linear. I'd have good days where I felt strong and independent, and then I'd have bad days where I missed the version of Derek I'd thought he was. I had to keep reminding myself that the man I missed never really existed. He was a character Derek played, a mask he wore to keep me invested while he did whatever he wanted. Slowly, I started to reclaim pieces of myself I'd lost during the relationship. I'd always loved hiking, but Derek had preferred shorter, easier trails, so I'd adjusted to his preferences. Now I started challenging myself with more difficult hikes. I summited peaks I'd never attempted before, pushing my body and proving to myself that I was capable of more than I'd believed. I joined a hiking group and made new friends, people who shared my love of the outdoors and who encouraged rather than limited me. I also reconnected with old friends I'd drifted away from during my relationship with Derek. Women I'd known in college who I'd gradually stopped seeing because Derek always had other plans or didn't like them. We met for dinners and drinks, and I realized how much I'd missed having friendships that didn't revolve around accommodating someone else's schedule or mood. These women reminded me of who I'd been before Derek, confident and funny and engaged with the world. About 6 months after the breakup, I started to notice a shift. I'd go entire days without thinking about Derek. When something reminded me of him, I'd feel a brief pang of sadness, but it would pass quickly instead of ruining my whole day. I'd see couples walking together downtown, and instead of feeling bitter or heartbroken, I'd just feel neutral. Sometimes even happy for them, hoping their relationships were healthier than mine had been. I went on a few dates, nothing serious. just coffee or drinks with men I met through friends or dating apps. Some were nice, some weren't. I wasn't desperately seeking a relationship anymore. I was content being alone, which was something I'd never felt before. I'd always thought I needed to be part of a couple to be complete, but Derek had inadvertently taught me that being alone is better than being with the wrong person. One evening I was at home reading when I realized I felt genuinely happy. Not happy because of something that had happened or someone I was with. Just happy. Content with my life, proud of how I'd handled everything, excited about my future. It was such a simple feeling, but it felt profound. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt this way. Maybe never. I thought about Derek sometimes, but without the emotional charge that used to accompany those thoughts. I wondered if he'd learned anything, if he'd changed at all. I heard through the grapevine that he'd eventually found another job, though not in tech sales anymore. Someone said they'd seen him on a dating app. I felt a brief moment of concern for whoever might date him next, but then I reminded myself that I'd done what I could. I'd exposed his behavior. I'd warned Natalie. What Derek did from here was his choice. Looking back now, more than a year after everything happened, I can see how much I've grown. The experience with Derek was painful, sometimes unbearably so, but it taught me things I needed to learn. It taught me to trust my instincts. Those moments when something felt off with Derek, when my gut told me he was lying, I was right. But I'd ignored my intuition because I wanted to believe him, because I was afraid of losing him. Now I know that my instincts are usually correct, and ignoring them to preserve a relationship is never worth it. I learned that actions speak louder than words. Derek said all the right things. He talked about marriage and future and forever. But his actions told a different story. He was distant, secretive, dismissive. He prioritized everyone but me. I learned to pay attention to how people behave, not just what they say. Words are easy. Consistent, respectful action is what matters. Most importantly, I learned about my own worth. Derek made me feel like I should be grateful for his attention, like I was lucky he chose to spend time with me. He treated me as an option, something convenient but easily replaceable. And for too long I accepted that treatment because I thought that was what I deserved. But I don't deserve that. No one does. I deserve to be someone's priority, not their option. I deserve honesty, respect, and genuine care. The experience also taught me about the power of standing up for yourself and for others. When I found evidence of Derek's professional misconduct, I could have done nothing. Part of me wanted to just move on, leave it all behind me, pretend none of it had happened. But I chose to act. I reported the fraud because it was the right thing to do, because other people deserved to be protected from Derek's deceptive practices. I warned Natalie because she deserved to make an informed choice about her future. Those actions took courage. They opened me up to potential retaliation, to being called vindictive or bitter. But I did them anyway because they aligned with my values. And in doing so, I reclaimed my power. Derek had spent 3 years making me feel small, uncertain, and insecure. By exposing him, by refusing to stay silent, I proved to myself that I'm not small. I'm strong. I'm capable of standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. I also learned about forgiveness, though not in the way I expected. I don't forgive Derek because he deserves it, or because he's truly sorry. I forgive him for my own peace of mind. Holding on to anger and resentment was exhausting. It kept me tied to Derek emotionally, kept giving him power over my life, even after he was gone. By forgiving him, I released that connection. I let go of the need for him to understand the damage he caused, or to make it right. His journey is his own. Mine is separate now. These days, my life looks different than I imagined it would a year ago. I'm single, which I once thought would be devastating, but which now feels empowering. I have a career I love, friends who genuinely care about me, hobbies that fulfill me. I'm not waiting for someone to complete me or give my life meaning. I'm building a life that feels meaningful on its own, and if someone comes along who adds to that life in a healthy way, wonderful. But if not, I'm still going to be okay. I date occasionally, but I'm much more discerning now. I recognize red flags early. When someone is inconsistent, when their words and actions don't align, when they make me feel insecure or uncertain, I end it. I don't give second chances to people who show me they don't respect me. Some might call that harsh. I call it having standards. I'm also more open about my experience now. Not in a bitter way, but in a way that I hope helps other women. When friends tell me about relationships that sound unhealthy, I gently point out concerning patterns. When younger colleagues ask for advice about dating, I share lessons I've learned. I'm honest about the fact that I wasted 3 years on the wrong person and that it's okay to leave even if you've invested time. Sunk cost fallacy applies to relationships just as much as it does to business decisions. Derek taught me one final lesson, though he probably didn't mean to. He said he had the right to marry any woman and do anything he wanted. And you know what? In a sense, he was right. He did have the freedom to make those choices. But what he didn't understand, what he learned the hard way, is that everyone else also has rights. Natalie had the right to know the truth before marrying him. His clients had the right to honest business practices. His employer had the right to terminate him for ethical violations. And I had the right to walk away to expose his misconduct to protect others from experiencing what I experienced. Derek thought his rights existed in a vacuum, that he could exercise his freedom without considering anyone else's rights or the consequences of his actions. He thought that being a man gave him special privileges, that the women in his life should just accept whatever treatment he chose to give them. But he learned that we live in a world of mutual accountability. Your rights end where other people's begin. You can't demand the freedom to do anything you want while denying others the freedom to respond to your actions. I hope Derek learned from all of this. I genuinely do. I don't wish him ill. I just hope he understands now that people aren't disposable, that relationships require honesty and respect, that you can't lie and manipulate your way through life without eventually facing consequences. But whether he learned those lessons or not isn't my concern anymore. I did my part. The rest is up to him. As for me, I'm focused on the future. I have career goals. I'm working toward a promotion I'm aiming for. I'm planning a solo trip to Iceland next summer, something I've always wanted to do. I'm taking a pottery class and learning to create beautiful things with my own hands. I'm showing up for my friends, being present in their lives in ways I couldn't be when all my emotional energy was consumed by Derek's dysfunction. Sometimes people ask me if I regret the 3 years I spent with Derek. If I wish I could have that time back. The answer is complicated. Yes, I wish I'd recognized who he was earlier. I wish I'd left sooner. But I don't regret the experience entirely, because it shaped who I am now. I'm stronger, wiser, more compassionate, and more self-aware because of what I went through. And I know exactly what I will and won't tolerate in future relationships. Derek said I was convenient, that I should be grateful for the time he gave me. But looking back, I realize he had it backward. He should have been grateful. I gave him 3 years of loyalty, love, and support. I stood by him, believed in him, and built my life around him. I was a good partner, maybe too good. And he squandered that. He traded something real and valuable for the shallow thrill of having options, of feeling powerful by manipulating multiple women. In the end, he lost everything worth having, and I gained everything I needed. So if I could say anything to Derek now, it would be this. You thought you had the right to marry any woman and do anything you wanted. You thought you were powerful because you could lie and manipulate without consequence. But you underestimated the women in your life. You underestimated me. And that was your biggest mistake. Because while you were playing games, we were living real lives, building real strength, developing real integrity. And when you finally faced the consequences of your actions, you realized too late that the woman you dismissed as convenient was actually the strongest person in the room. I don't need you to understand that. I don't need you to acknowledge it or apologize or make amends. I've already moved on. I've already built a life that doesn't include you, a life where I'm valued and respected and loved by people who actually deserve a place in it. You had the right to walk away from me, and I had the right to make sure you understood exactly what you were walking away from and exactly what kind of person you really are. That's not revenge. That's justice. And it's the last thing I'll ever give you. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a relationship where you ignored red flags because you wanted so badly to believe someone loved you? How did you find the strength to walk away? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes we all need a reminder that we're stronger than we think we are, and that we deserve better than being someone's option. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it helps you in some way, reminds you of your own worth, and gives you courage to stand up for yourself when you need to. Remember, you're not alone, and you're never too far gone to reclaim your power. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next story.